I don't even know.
38.
Okay, what Enrique said. So today's topic, we're going to start with a question I got from Lukáš Janda from Czech Republic. What we're going to do is how do you maintain top side control? So we're going to go over several concepts and my preferred sort of positioning on top side control to number one is maintain that control as long as you possibly can, and two, but more importantly, elicit some sort of a reaction which allows you to sort of go into a submission mode. So a lot of people hold, this is sort of a traditional holding position for side control. This is probably what most people do. I don't like it. I don't like several aspects of this. So I'm not saying that I'll never go here. A lot of times I will go. I don't lock my hands. That's number one. Because if I lock my hands, first of all, I'm not controlling Enrique's hip movement to his left. Second, a lot of times when you lock your hands and you got somebody strong and they decide to rock towards you and then go, you cannot unlock them. You cannot unlock your hands. It takes that split second longer than it takes to unlock your hands. You're going to get rolled through. Okay? So a lot of times you lock up your hands, go. Yeah, you're going to roll through. So I'm not a fan of locking my hands. If anything, if I'm here, I will keep my hand by the hips. So at least this is a better control. If Enrique tries to roll me through, I can always post. So if I'm going to be in this position, generally speaking, I leave this arm sort of floating. This is not my preferred top side control position. The preferred side control position is, the biggest danger is if I'm on top side control on his right side, is the right leg coming in. And a lot of times, you know, guys have good guard recovery. And if you're anything like me or most of my senior students, once you recover guard, you go into immediate offensive mode, meaning that once he recovers guard, he's immediately attacking, not just sort of, you know, oh, great, I'm back in guard. So this is not what I use. Sometimes I'll get here, but immediately the danger is the right leg. So to eliminate that danger, you guys, if you can come up with a creative name, by all means do it. I actually don't have a name for it, but this is my preferred top side control position. You can call it an arm block side control. Huh?
Fox control.
Fox control. So rather than blocking the hip, which is difficult, even if you're really strong, if Enrique can just go up, yeah, he's got two legs. So even if I'm blocking that, this is not a good maintenance position. This is way better. So he can move, but he's not getting any better. And again, whatever you want to call it, let's for the purposes of this episode, let's call it arm block side control. I'm open to new names, but this is my preferred top side control. I can go both arms on the same side. Left. Usually what I'll do is if I start on the same side, so initially maybe I'm here, I will transition to the arm block and then I will transition my left hand to the other side. So this allows me to sort of start attacking positions. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you, once I pass guard and I go into a traditional side control, which on his right side I would define my left hand under his head, right arm on the far side of the hip, and then how I transition into this arm block side control. So maybe I'll do a knee cut pass. I'm here, and I did it automatically before I started explaining. I wind up here and I immediately swim. I don't lift my chest off him. I immediately swim and I block the leg. And then I start to use it. It's not a control to hold him in place. It's more to just block his thigh from coming in, putting me back in guard. Once I'm in this position, I will then start to look for submissions. And what I'm looking for is the top side control, generally speaking. Yes, there's some leg entries, but generally speaking, I'm looking for upper body submission, be it neck, be it the arms. I could go either side. I could either go closer arm or farther side arm, depending on what he opens up. So once I'm here, I will generally transfer, and as he starts to turn, this is a really good sort of sequence. And from here, you know, we have Kimura, potentially arm bars. So a lot of times when you start to control that leg, he's not getting it back into guard. So he has to come up with a different way to escape, to basically put you back in guard or cause some sort of reversal. Most often they will start to turn to you, which obviously, when they start turn towards you, the far side arm becomes the prime target. So let's look at the whole sequence, and just pay attention, guys, because I'm literally wanted to explain it, but I just did it automatically. So even though I wind up with a nice sort of the way that I normally do, I immediately start to transition. As you start, I'm actually letting his shoulder come off the ground, and from here, I go straight into Kimura or potentially armbar attacks. All right? So, with that, do we have any questions, Mike?
First question we have, this is from Adolfo. He's asking, Fox, do you like to face him from side control, like in a Kesa-like position?
Do I actually have the headlock? Adolfo. So, do I have an underhook? Or do I have... I'm not a fan of being here. If I'm here, I try to... I don't have the heft. There's some guys... So usually when people are here, they're either horrible at it or really good. If they're horrible at it, you just take their back. But if they're really good, this is going to be a painful time for Enrique. The question is, do I have the underhook? Okay, underhook. You can speak, Mike. Yeah, I don't. People for some reason like this position, and the reason I think it's sort of like allows you to look your opponent in the eyes and kind of like see what I've done to you. You know, like, how do you feel about this now? The problem is, if I make a mistake, if I stay here, arm bars, ugly triangles, just kind of just putting me back into danger. So I'm not a fan of that position other than transitory. So when I wind up in that position with the underhook, I will get there. Maybe I'll sit out. I'll use it to isolate this arm. As soon as I have the isolation, this is the position that I'm going to start to go into, because this is extremely dominant. So Enrique actually made, go ahead, keep going, the mistake of coming out the other way. And you go into a Dars. So I'm not a fan of sitting out for extended period of time. So I hope that answers your question. Immediately I square back up. And as you can see, I'm constantly getting that hand on my right arm, especially if I'm on his right side, my right arm into the arm block side control position. That's a mouthful. Let's come up with a better name.
Fox control.
Fox
control. That's it, not a mouthful.
And Gilbert Lopez is asking, what is your recommended arm placement being on the bottom?
Oh, it depends heavily on there's just too many possibilities. It depends heavily where he is. So I just don't want to be going through all the possible side control, bottom side control escapes. There's just too many, and we don't have enough time. But at least the one that he's using, or I was using. So when he starts to use this, I know that at some point he's going to go north-south. First of all, my right elbow, generally speaking, cannot go fully to my shoulder. So I will what I'll do is I'll try to bump his head and then I'm looking to either, if I can get my arms in, legs in, great. But if I cannot, I'm looking for, go ahead, readjust to maybe, yeah, as he's readjusting to come out. So basically, I need him to readjust. It's a very dominant side control position. So if I'm on the bottom in that position, I will look to kind of arch. So yeah, do the whole thing. Do the from the so they could see the progression. So you could see it right, like, go back. This, as I'm getting ready for a traditional escape, that it has just been eliminated by his arm repositioning. So what I'll do is I'll try to get my legs in. If he backs off, I regard. If I get it in, I armbar him. A lot of times I don't, but most often what you're going to get is some sort of repositioning, and I'm looking to regard from a repositioning. So again, I'm trying to stay, with the topic, because like I said, your escape from the bottom, it depends heavily where his arms and body are positioned. So obviously he could be sitting out facing your head. He could be sitting out facing your legs. He could be square. His arms could be both on the same side. The arm block.
The Fox block.
The Fox block. Position which could be both arms on the same side or one on the far side. You could have guys arms on both, and there's just so many different variations. And obviously, if I'm the guy on top, I'm constantly switching in response to his escapes, because if he tries to escape, he needs to frame. He needs to get into a position. Once I switch my arms, that escape that he's planning is out the window. He needs to change it. So that's, if you're the guy on top, your best way to keep somebody down is to try to constantly change until either the neck or the arm, or same side arm or far side arm opens up.
And Ian Feiner is asking, do you tend to float more on top as your opponents get bigger?
Say it again?
Do you tend to float more on top as your opponents get bigger?
No, I don't float because, this is a really good question. So if the guy is big, I don't float, because the bottom guy doesn't require a lot of technique to, especially if he's bigger and stronger, to dislodge you. All he needs is like semi-decent grips and go. So what I do is I don't float, I'm attacking nonstop until something opens up. If the guy is bigger, especially if he has, let's call it barrel chested, which I try not to mount, because your stability in a mount is a lot less than it is I will mount if I feel his arms come up, then I will mount, because then I will start to isolate the arms. Even if I get turned, I will make something happen from the bottom. But if I'm on top of a bit bigger guy, I will attack nonstop until I get an exposure of the neck or the arms. Again, you can, there's certain things you can do as far as legs, but it's usually the upper body attack. So we're just going to go through a bit of a simulation. So again, as I'm doing this, and I just bring this, I'm attacking, I have an opening, and I'm taking it. Now, Enrique, being a bigger, stronger guy, is going to dislodge me. I go with a scissor choke. So you could see that as I don't float. It's difficult to float on top of somebody that's big. It's basically, it becomes, all he needs is just like a little bit of grip and just bench press you. They tell you shouldn't bench press, which is true because it's not a technical escape. And that'll only work for bigger, stronger guys, but it's hard to argue that it won't work. That it won't work, yeah.
And Engsberg is asking, do you try to pin the arms down with your knees from Fox control?
Yes. So that's another aspect I tend to do is if I can pin his arms with my shins, not my knees. That will make your job easier. It's going to be, first of all, So as I'm doing this, yeah. So if I pin his arm, it's going to be a lot harder for him to get that leg. So if I will still do it, but once I pin the arm, so a lot of times when we're coming through, we're taught to pull, but guys fight, and it's usually, even if you have a good grip on the sleeve, you're not going to prevail. So when he's pulling back, I will pin it. So now his position's gotten a lot more precarious. I will switch, I will step, I will attack the far side arm. Now, if Enrique now gets his left arm back to the floor, I will switch. And now, again, I'm looking for some opening. I just got it on the neck. I will basically, again, constantly pin the arms. From here, I will mount, even if the guy is big, is barrel chested, because if Enrique turns me now, he's going an extremely strong arm triangle. So that's how I maintain control on top side control. Just non-stop attack. And I'm slowly shutting off possibilities or options for the guy in the bottom.
And Jared Bolton is asking, how do I protect my arm from Kimura/Americana when I'm on the bottom side?
When you're on the bottom, do you have a backyard? If not, offer to mow some old lady's yard in your neighborhood. So, we're taught this is the way. T-Rex arms. So as I'm on the bottom, I try not to have my elbows separate from my torso. Okay, so this is one of the reasons why MMA for Jiu-Jitsu is different. Because, if you have T-Rex arms, you're really not protecting your face that well. But you're protecting sort of the dominant position by the guy on top. Once you add striking, you do need to have your sort of elbows separate, but you constantly play that game that make sure that you don't allow them to control your torso. So what I'm talking about, mowing the lawn. Mow the lawn like this. Can they see this, Mike?
Yeah.
T-Rex arms, okay?
What if it's a big
Get a small one. So, you have to really, as you're creating frames, this is not a frame. This is a frame. So the frames tend to have, if there's a gap, you need to be conscious and constantly closing that gap. All right. Anytime when you start to get here, this is a big gap for somebody to drop in on, whether it's with their leg, whether it's with their torso, with their arm. Once people drop in, they start to gain better control.
And we have a question from Elaine Manzo. He's asking, good morning, Fox and all. I'm so scared of heel hooks. Do you have a preferred defense?
Depends on the entry. We don't do heel hooks in McGee, but we'll make an exception for today. So if the guy goes in through traditional Ashigarami, I just go with it. Sit on his leg. Right now, it kind of hurts my ankle, but it's not really severe. I just sit on him. I just maintain that. Even if he initially hooks under that leg, I try to make sure I control that leg, get out. From here, once my leg slowly starts to slip, I come out. This actually brings me to a good topic. ADCC. It was an amazing event, amazing performance by a lot of different athletes. Gordon is truly special. He's got a very broad game that's, he's got all aspects of the game. So I think, but there's some takeaways that I'd like to sort of talk about. Maybe at least they're my takeaways. going into a bigger weight class did not seem to pan out for some guys. You know, even going to bigger weight class and cutting weight, it didn't seem to be a good sort of strategy. Or you know, maybe they need the bigger weight to take root for a couple more years to make sure that it actually their body adjusts to that bigger weight and they can supply the oxygen and power throughout the matches. It was kind of interesting because I actually saw the statistics, but heel hooks to me, the heel hooks that worked where it was a really good technique and finishing technique was usually by guys that were just dominant over the other one, and it just got in position, done, finished. In instances where what I think was an opposite takeaway is where you had instances where several very important matches were decided by a leg lock, but it was done to the guy that is a leg lock specialist and that initiated the exchange. That I think was a pretty big takeaway, that you had, I think, 3 or 4 different matches end where leg lock specialist attacks the legs, and as the exchange goes on, as they're spinning through and so forth, the guy that was under the attack opportunistically sees the other guy make a mistake and takes advantage of it. That was a big takeaway. The number one dominant submission was a rear naked choke, which that should and will be a continuing great weapon. What I think to some extent is that it's kind of an interesting idea that this is such a dominant attack, but usually people don't get into that position unless they're truly dominant. So meaning that what I'm trying to say, that the guys that finished their matches with a rear naked choke were already winning. They already got the points. So the idea that they finished, okay, yeah, that makes sense, and that they probably would have won anyways based on points. What I think was an underrated submission, which was, so number 1 was rear naked choke, number 2 was arm bars, where you had matches decided, which were extremely close matches, but between 2 guys, especially where the guys are just so good at regarding, that the arm bars came out of nowhere, theoretically out of nowhere, and finished the match. So to me, that is the true big takeaway, is arm bars. I've always been a big advocate of arm bars, but I'm a big advocate of all submissions. But the rear naked choke is such a dominant submission, but you need to be in a strong position to be able to impose it. And generally speaking, you would have won anyways. With arm bars, at least the couple that made decisions in matches that were, again, important matches, and it was sort of even until that point and done. So that's some of the takeaways. I'd be curious to know what you guys think. But this is some of the stuff that I took away. There's one more I want to add. A lot of guys tend to use body lock, both takedowns as well as body lock guard passing. The interesting thing was that on the feet, that the judo style takedowns, obviously they have to be modified for no-gi and for submission grappling, but the judo style takedowns, the judo style footwork saved a lot of people where they got body locked, even with the guy that was doing the body lock having their head in the proper positioning, which means usually that's a takedown, not just a takedown, but generally speaking, top side control. So that's immediately 5 points instead of just 2. The judo style footwork and quick out, you have to act quickly, actually save the day for them. So that's some of the big takeaways I got from ADCC, but what an amazing event. And we're out of time. So guys, we will see you next week. And share, subscribe, like, tell your friends, and I don't know what else.
Practice the Fox control.
And enjoy jiu-jitsu.